My name is Camilla, and I'm a 14-year-old student. We failed. We failed to compromise, to optimize, and to revolutionize. We failed because we couldn't rationalize our food, resulting in quite a difference in resources between countries. We are constantly overusing food and ignoring the fact that kids, women, and men are dying because they didn't have what we abundantly eat and waste. We are ignoring it. We are forgetting the 9.1 million people that in developing countries are dying because they didn't have a chance to compromise, optimize, and revolutionize. We failed because we are prioritizing profit instead of the wellness of the world. We are letting companies produce nocive products that not only are harmful to our health, but to the planet. Traditional approaches will not work. Food and agricultural innovation are the key to solve existing problems. Incubator and accelerator systems are a great example of successful methods that must be used to support a better food system. We failed, but it's not too late to make things better, to acknowledge that without innovation, we will not survive. We owe it to our future generations. Failure is not an option.
Hi all, and thank you for being there. So my name is Mathieu Vincent. I'm the co-founder of Digital Food Lab, and today we'll be talking about how to accelerate the future of food. And we'll be 7 on stage, so we'll all try to make real quick answers to the questions. And just to introduce myself, my name is Mathieu, as I said, and with Digital Food Lab, what we do is we work with food retailers, food corporates, and help them to understand what is food tech, what is the future of food, and even if it's often just starting to help them understand what is a startup first, and we work with them just to accelerate how they manage the future of food. And so we'll go from right with Andrea,
Okay.
and you will all be able to introduce yourself and maybe in one word or one sentence how you accelerate food.
Yeah. Hello, it's Andrea from Plug and Play Italy. Thanks for having me. As Camilla was saying, we need innovation for food security, sustainability, all of these challenges. And the way Plug and Play does it is by being the largest platform globally to connect startups and big companies. We need startups because they're lean, they have new ideas, they can innovate fast. But we also need them to work with big companies because they have the structure, the distribution to bring to market these new products. Plug and Play was started in the Silicon Valley, but we just launched our first food program outside of the US in Italy just a few weeks ago.
Hi everybody, my name's Alex Worker. I'm a New Zealander. I live in Hong Kong, and for the last 4 years we've been building out a food incubator in Beijing. What we're trying to do is validate food concepts very, very quickly in China to move with the food trends. So about a few years ago we were focusing on inbound concepts and products, and more recently we've actually seen the market move to, they want international concepts, but more interestingly for me is there's a lot of Beijing entrepreneurs now that want to validate concepts in Beijing and then take it either to Shanghai, Chengdu, or one day Milan. So we're kind of sitting on the knife edge.
Hello everybody, I'm Marco Perrone. I'm the head of Open Innovation and Acceleration Program in Deloitte. We have launched the Food Tech Accelerator 1 year ago. It's an ecosystem platform, a 15-week acceleration program where, let's say, we bring together corporate partners, and based on their needs, we try to find the right solution of mature startup that want to scale at an industrial scale. So we open the market, the go-to-market and industrial processes.
My name is Barry McGuckin from Food Innovation Australia, and thank you to Seeds&Chips for the opportunity to be here to speak today. Food Innovation Australia is helping with the innovation right from incubators and accelerators all the way through to setting up clusters, which then take the companies that have been through an incubator and an accelerator and giving them a longer home in a region to be able to continue to develop the skills as their company matures and develops capabilities, and as they learn what they want to do as a business from what they've already been successful at. We are a not-for-profit federally funded organisation, and as a result of that, we take companies all the way through any part of the value chain, whether it's seed in ground through to waste in ground. If they've got a good idea, we'll help partner with them.
Hi. Oh, sorry about that. My name is Andrew Ive. Until about a year ago, I ran FoodX. FoodX is the largest food tech accelerator in New York City. About a year ago, I started something completely different called Big Idea Ventures, and we're focused on finding big ideas to focus on key challenges in the world. The first that we're tackling is basically the animal protein category by identifying about 100 companies over the next 4 years specifically focused on plant-based foods and cell-based technology so that we can bring delicious products and ingredients to market which ultimately will replace animal protein. We think that's important for climate change, for kind of use of land and water usage, etc. In terms of where we're focused on the North America and the Asian market. We have a program, so an accelerator program that's coming online in New York City and also in Singapore. So Singapore is currently our base for Asia, and New York is our base for North America. We invest in seed and early stage companies. We've raised circa $50 million. We'll be continuing to raise more over the next 11 months. And our absolute 100% focus at this point is on plant-based foods, technologies and ingredients. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Peter Kruger. Just a little bit as Andrew, I was managing a food tech accelerator based out of Rome, started Bootcamp Food Tech, which I founded about 3 years ago, managed for 3 cycles of acceleration. And I mean, the news today is that starting today, I become a partner in Peakbridge, handling seed, okay, thank you. Handling all the seed operations, starting with Food Sparks, which is going to be the seed fund connected to the EIT food initiative. Of course, strong focus on Europe, but again, I think interesting in this conversation because, you know, we'll be basically speaking to these guys. And of course, I bring on my experience, you know, in the acceleration space in the past.
Thanks. When we talk about accelerating the future of food, maybe one of the first question is location, where you choose to locate your incubator accelerator structure. And maybe I'll start with you with Startup Bootcamp. Why have you chosen Rome? It was maybe not a natural choice for food tech, innovation startup. Yeah, why Rome? Why do you plan to stay there for the future of Startup Bootcamp?
You know what carbonara is? I don't know. I mean, why Rome? I mean, Rome, first of all, because I'm totally crazy, so I like to do things in crazy ways. But yet, still, operating in Rome didn't prevent us from operating on a totally global scale. I mean, only 20% of the companies we accelerated came out of Italy. Yeah. The rest from literally all over the world. 30% of our companies are incorporated in Delaware. So even if we were sitting there in the backwaters of the remains of the ancient Roman Empire, because of that, I don't know, there were a lot of interesting teams that decided to come to our program. I think in general, of course, it's important to connect to your geography and to the resources that are available. And of course, Italy is a big player when it gets to food in many, many different ways. But in the end, when you're talking about acceleration, when you're talking about innovation, tech innovation, because we did food tech, you're talking about a global stuff. and you're trying to play global, okay? So whether you do it in Rome, yeah, maybe in New York it's a little bit easier in many ways. No, I want to, yeah, you've got many more investors available over there sitting, across the hall. But in the end, we operated as an international platform, connecting with people from all kinds of different regions and making a big effort to connect them. That was a very strong component of a model, okay? So is region important? Was that the question? How do we connect to the region? Of course, we connect for many reasons, even our personal history that brought us there, right? But then I think that each of us is looking much beyond. I mean, you want to play this game, you play it global. I don't think there is any other serious way of doing it. You agree?
Yeah,
No.
And so I would ask almost the same question to Marco. Why have you chosen Milan? Of course, there is Seeds&Chips, and yeah, why Milan? And also, maybe another question, you've just ended a first season of FoodTech Accelerator. How do you see the future? How do you have succeeded or not to connect with the local ecosystem? And yeah, what is the future for you?
So we choose Milan because we think that Italy, in particular Milan, can play a key role internationally on food tech. So I think that we cannot play too much games, but the food tech, yes. So we are raising a lot of initiative around food tech in Italy in the last 2-3 years. So I think we can say something. As Peter said, in any case, it's a global ecosystem platform, both as Deloitte, we have offices in 146 countries, but also partnering with players in the ecosystem. I think there is a good supportive way of working because it's quite small still, so can grow much more as fintech or life science, biotech. So it's on the right path. On the other side, we had, let's say, we were lucky because our location is within a mall, close to the supermarket, because one of our corporate partners is let's say a grocery store chain. So we had the chance for our startup to test really quick the product and the solution in the market. So it was really an accelerator for us and for our startup. So it's just in front of the grocery store. We just closed the first edition. Yesterday we had the demo days. We accelerate 7 startups, 2 from US, 2 from Israel, just saying that it's really international, 3 from Italy. We are really excited about the results. Just to share some numbers, we were able in 100 days to run 6 pilots, 3 in store, 3 at an industrial scale. So we have as corporate partner Cereal Dogs, that is the most important Italian seed producer and transforming process. Amadori, that is the leader in the poultry industry, and Finiper in the retail. And so we were able to combine cross-pilot among these corporate partners, so 3 in the store, direct to consumer, and 3 at the industrial scale. Another good result, I think, in those 100 days, since we selected them, they have raised already 3 million before the demo day, and so we hope that these metrics will continue to increase. So, and we have launched the second edition, I think also thanks to these results, so we have already the commitment from our previous partner, and we are trying to enlarge in that.
Yeah, I have to say that I was a bit skeptic in the beginning about the location, etc. When I went to your incubator, just being, I would say, just above the supermarket is a really nice idea just to connect really quick with the local player. So really good idea from you.
Yeah, let's say it was really successful.
Yeah.
We don't believe to at the beginning because it's not so easy to find retailers able to expose and to test in so few times, really. Again, 100 days from the beginning to yesterday. So
yeah,
it was amazing.
retailers that want to explore and experiment are pretty rare. And so maybe the last question about Europe to Andrea. So we have 3 Italian structure about innovation acceleration, and you are launching, yeah, the newest one. So why launching in Italy, where there is already 2 structures? And yeah, why? Just how do you plan to differentiate and attract new ventures?
Yeah, and I mean, we're all all three of us are Italians, so of course we are biased and we say we really care about the local innovation ecosystem. So the main reason why Plug and Play is coming to Italy to do food is because, as was said before, this is a sector that Italy has a lot to add. On the one hand, Plug and Play was born in the Silicon Valley about 13 years ago, but what we've seen is to accelerate startups and make them work with big companies, you have to be close to the companies. And in this sense, we see that Italy has a lot of world-class food companies. Maybe most of them, they're not huge in terms of the scale. That's how the Italian economy and capitalism has always been structured, but they have world-class tech and industrial processes. Not just food products, but also in terms of machinery and food production, Italy is very advanced. And having lived abroad for 6 years, I realized this is a bit of a surprise to many people abroad. But it's not just on the corporate side. Italy has a lot of talent. So if we look, for example, in Milan, there's the Politecnico and Bocconi that in their areas, they're in the top 10, top 20 worldwide as universities. The city itself, over the last 5 years, has improved and changed massively. So as Plug and Play, we look at Milan the same way, for example, as we look to Stuttgart, where we have our mobility accelerator with Mercedes, Porsche, Hyundai, and many other corporations. So Stuttgart is not on the map for startups, but it has a strong industrial history and lots of talent and university research in engineering. And by bringing Plug and Play there, we managed to create a startup ecosystem. And this is the same thing we like to create in Italy. By bringing startups from abroad. That's our main focus, especially for the first batch. Plug and Play, in all of its 30 locations worldwide, we run 2 batches of startups per year. In 2019, we started with WAV in Italy, and the focus is very much on international startups. And one thing that is very important, also about differentiating ourselves, we want to do it in Italy, but becoming a hub for food tech beyond the Italian borders. So we have Esselunga, which is a strong supermarket chain in Italy. We also have Lavazza, the best coffee company in the world. But for example, we also have Tetra Pak. And I think the Tetra Pak example is very interesting because it's a Swedish company. It's based in Switzerland, that it's been partnered with Plug and Play in Silicon Valley for 2 years. But they ask us to come to Italy because that's where they have a big R&D center. And so this is very important, I think, for the Italian ecosystem, that it's not just about products, but within the digital revolution and innovation, our country can become a hub for also other companies worldwide.
Okay, thanks. For those of you that know what we do with Digital Food Lab, we do a lot of mapping of startups. We try to find how many startups are there in each ecosystem. And what we see right now is there is not so much new startups. The number of new startups each year is pretty much the same in food tech, but the number of incubators, accelerators is so huge. There is a new incubator each week, a new accelerator each month. It pops up everywhere. In France, where we come from, there is incubators, food tech incubators everywhere in each city. And yeah, we know pretty much about Europe. We had yet 3 people about Italy. And I was wondering, you, Barry, can you just give us feedback about how is it in Australia, in maybe Asia? Is there this same craziness about incubators and food tech accelerators?
It's probably not as crazy as where you guys are spending most of your time. It is less developed, it's less mature. There is still, however, in this last financial year, 4 or 5 new incubators in universities that have popped up that seem to be a place that people are wanting to go. But there is a lot of new incubators and accelerators beginning in Australia, and we're finding, like Alex has got, in Asia, they're popping up all over the place as well. In food, they are less common than they are in IT and advanced manufacturing, and we don't really know why that's the case. There has been a lack of interest in food in Australia and Asia Pacific historically. That is changing rapidly, and it will be interesting to see how that develops, particularly from a capital point of view. The capital has gone into other, probably higher margin products than in food, which traditionally in Asia and Australia has been smaller, but the longer term benefits catch up over time. So I think we're going to see a rapid change in the capital investment in our accelerators and incubators. What we do see more is a growing of clusters where people in regions geographically in Australia are wanting to match and work together. And I think I'm seeing the same in some of the places, particularly in China and in Indonesia, where they're looking to work together in a community and then draw in investment.
Okay, thanks. And maybe to continue on about Asia with Alex, your structure and the hatchery. You're working with food project in China, in Hong Kong. Maybe the same question I asked about Italy. Why have you gone there? Why have you chosen Hong Kong with all the other opportunities worldwide?
Yeah, no, good question. I'm still trying to work that out myself. Look, really resonating with Barry and some of his perspectives. I think if I'm going to start with the why, how to feed 4.5 billion people in Asia more sustainably, right? It's a big enough problem to focus on in my lifetime. Then I kind of look at the what, and I think, we're all up on stage here, and maybe people in the audience as well, where it's this, how do you really kickstart that next phase of ideation, validation, that's required, and then how do you test it in Milan and then throw it into Beijing within 2 weeks, not 2 years. So as a New Zealander, we export 95% of our food into Asia, mainly Asia. I didn't really know who my consumer was when I was working in big food. So I went to Beijing, did an MBA, met my business partners, and we were saying, look, there's a lot of people out there, whether you're coming from Milan or you're coming from Melbourne, where the longer I stay in China, the less I know. And I say that with earnest because things are changing so quickly. So it's then, how do you have business models where you can move very, very, very quickly with those fast changing trends? I think China is 2 to 3 years behind the US and Europe in terms of the ecosystem, but catching up very fast. And I think to Barry's point, look, tech was very, very sexy and still is in China, but it's moved a lot more into craft, into micro-personalization. Food is suddenly cool, aligned to the sustainability and the SDG mandate, and the Chinese government out of Beijing is now very, very, very serious about all of this. So, and I think, the swine or the African pork issues is a good testament to really, be looking at pork in China, and how do you help the Chinese government be more sufficient using pork alternatives. So that's a long way of saying Hong Kong's important, but I think if you're really going to be serious in China, don't talk China, talk cities in China, talk regions in China, and really know your consumer. We're starting in Beijing. I still don't know a lot, but we're trying to work with parties that kind of do. Working with VCs, we're more concept than we are product. So that means we're more validating ideas that people want to eat in a space rather than CPG, but we're now moving into CPG through partnerships. So it's a work in progress. We're in Beijing, we're looking at Hong Kong, and then I keep thinking, do we go Chengdu, or do we go Seoul, or even Jakarta?
Yeah, interesting point of view. And maybe one answer about choosing the right place is not to choose and to go both US and Asia. What you've done, going both in Singapore and the US. And maybe can you just tell us a bit more about this dual choice?
Sure. So there's multiple dimensions to it. We're about big ideas. We're about big change. One of the key drivers for us is climate change and the 2-degree temperature change and the impact that's going to have on agriculture, on societies, on rising water levels, so on and so forth. So we're not necessarily driven by finding a company that's going to be successful in the US, or finding a company that's going to be successful in a particular city or a particular country. We're focused on finding companies that have the potential to be a global phenomenon. We're looking for businesses which are going to introduce products, technologies, ingredients, which are going to have a global impact. And from our point of view, we're initially focused on North America and Asia as our 2 key areas of focus. Part of the reason why we're doing both together at the same time is because as we find great companies in one location, and actually we're recruiting globally, but we're going to be working with companies in New York and in Singapore, when we find a company in Asia or when we find a company in North America and we help them and we work with them to grow, the goal is to create the ecosystem in both of those two key regions so that we can bring the best of those companies into the new region and help them to grow in that region also. A couple of, for instances, Beyond Meat, you guys are probably aware of that tiny little company in the alternative protein space. They're an 8 to 9 to 10-year-old company who only recently decided that China was going to be one of their key strategic areas of growth. They found, and if you speak to anyone in the company, that they needed to almost recreate their business when it came to penetrating the Chinese market, because they needed to find a new source of raw materials, ingredients. They needed to find co-manufacturers in China. They needed to understand a totally new distribution channel. They needed to get that product into retailers that acted unlike US-based retailers. And it's become almost like creating a second business for them. And one of the things we're focused on is, let's build that ecosystem, and that's the important thing about the accelerators up here. When I was at FoodX, that's Gen 1 acceleration. It's about working with companies and bringing the right mentors into the equation. Gen 2 acceleration, that's what I'm focused on building, is about building the ecosystems with the supply chain, with the value chain. What that means is the right ingredients companies, DSM, ADM, Ingredion, big companies, but also the medium-sized, smaller ingredient companies. It's also about having the right relationships with the co-manufacturers, having the right relationships with the distributors, and ultimately the retail channels, so that when we find the perfect companies that are global opportunities and are going to have a significant impact on climate, on consumers, on taste, and in response to taste, we're going to be able to plug them into these value chains and get them to market with a lot less friction than if we wanted to launch them in a new market and didn't have any of that value chain built. So from us, it's about ecosystem development, not just acceleration.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting as a point of view, because right now it's really hard for a startup to just go from a country to another one. Right here in Europe, we have a demonstration, we have a collection of small countries, small markets, and if you have a product that you want to retail, it's really hard to go from Italy to France, Switzerland to Portugal, etc. We don't have yet this huge market, and even if we want to go outside Europe, we have to start it all over again. And so we'll need to find solutions to make startups global more and more quick. Maybe, as I said, there is a lot of new ventures, new corporate accelerators, new incubators, etc. One of the biggest questions right now for these incubators or accelerators is to find the best startups, to attract them, and then to find money, also to find the right partners. So there is a kind of competition, which is kind of fun to look at. And so how do you do to attract the best people, to find the best startups, to attract them in your city, and then also to attract the best partners, to make the best experimentation, to create the ecosystem. So it's really hard to build this network effect of startups, incubators, and other partners. And how do you manage to make yourself visible from the best? Maybe you can share your experience with Startup Bootcamp, because I think you've said that you had thousands of people applying to your incubator. So
thousands, maybe not. We received we received in total something like about 2,500 applications over the 3 years. So a lot of people out there. I'm not so sure the number of startups is dwindling. I think there is a constant creation there. It's true there are many more accelerators, incubators, and also, I don't know, we should probably start introducing different definitions, because we're often, people are doing pretty different jobs, right? And the accelerator and the incubator is not fitting them all. Yes, I experienced it personally. First year was great, because we were very few around, all the good ones were coming. Second year became a little bit harder. Third year, oh my God, really hard. So, and of course, this implies that you have to update your value proposition. It's not working, you have to increase it. We were thinking of, introducing higher ticket sizes for the companies and so on. But then, it really also depends on what's the model. I mean, I think an incubator is doing a different job than, what an accelerator is doing. A scale-up accelerator, whatever that is probably doing something even different. We were focusing very much, what we tried to present as our real value proposition was this global network. And we were investing a lot in that. We're like organizing 15 international events every year, from San Francisco to Shanghai, and so on. Did it work? Probably yes. It helped us, to show that we did have some connections that could be useful. There's also something else happening. We all, I think, are aware. There's a lot of hopping. There are a lot of startups, that go in a program, then go to another program. There are teams that came from SOSV, went to Startup Bootcamp. Yes, there are. And there are also the ones that went from Startup Bootcamp to FoodX. So, and this poses another point, and that's justifying my role now. I mean, it's true. I think, startup production is coming. Maybe there are a lot of players helping the startups, to move their first steps. But if you go at the end of, of the value chain, especially from Series A and so on, we're seeing not so much deal flow coming in. And in fact, I don't envy investors operating at that stage because, they have their hair like this. They're always chasing deals, hoping to get in. So I strongly believe that now one of the, not the only one, but certainly one of the most important focus points is the seed stage. You're always talking about a seed gap everywhere, but I think there is particularly in this industry, and it's not just in Europe, it's everywhere. You go to San Francisco, and again, where are my startups? You got all these investors, where are my startups? So, and I think that's an interesting place to be. It's a place where you can help startups. It's a place where you can also develop interesting value for the investors. And we're betting on that with Food Sparks, of course, but the vision of PeakBridge is even broader than that. And of course, it's going to be very much about talking with these guys. I don't know with this guy because he has his own things. But, of course, for us, it's very interesting that there is this, rich environment. And then, yes, of course, probably we have to see the cycle completing. I think it's true that there is a bit of entrepreneurial fatigue. We're entering a phase of, a bit of entrepreneurial fatigue for many different messages coming into the ecosystem, but also because, honestly, there are a lot of people that see these entrepreneurs fighting, their life and, going nowhere. I mean, it's starting to become pretty frustrating, right? So I think we have to get the whole ecosystem working, not just at the origination level, but also growth, exits. There are some interesting things happening in the M&A world. My personal contribution in the future wants to be in the seed space. I hope it's useful, and that's it. And I hope, to speak to these guys a lot.
And I can't agree more about the problem of the seed gap in food tech industry. We talk a lot about with Series A, Series B investors, and they are all like, where are the startups? And yeah, guys, there is a problem. You need to fund more seed stage startups to find good Series A, good Series B startups. Yeah, as you said, Marco, you will start again a new season of Food Tech Accelerator with your same partners. So you've succeeded to just convince them to go with you again. So how do you manage to just engage them to make them sign again with you?
Yeah, I think it's also true, let's say what Peter said, so there are different value propositions, different role, incubator, accelerator. post-accelerator. So from our perspective, and I think was our right position, also as Deloitte, as the background we have. So we do not care much about investment. We focus on more mature startups. Some of our startups that join our accelerator already raised 2.5 million, 1.5 million, so they do not need money. So what we have seen is that, I said, the most promising startup, they do not look for funds. They have already, there are a lot of investors that want to invest in the right one. The big challenge from our point of view is to scale it. From an industrial point of view, to go to the market, to have access to the market. So maybe we also do not pick up some, let's say, unicorn or with promising metrics, but we pick up the one that were, the one that best integrate with our corporate partner, and possibly that match two of our corporate partner needs, because that means that it's really hard to bring to the market something because you need cross competencies, markets, and whatever. So I think this was the way, and also to focus on, let's say, make things happen. So pilots, go to market, make selling. So we are in the store for 40 days already. So it's really to prove that it's not just an investment, not too much long term, but that you can have some return or testing it on the market as soon as possible.
Yeah, and maybe what is lacking is like a Tinder for incubators and accelerators, because we have a lot of startups and entrepreneurs coming to us and asking, should I go to this incubator, or should I go to this one? Because they are saying a lot of things on the website, but it's not really the truth. We don't know. And there is a lack of, I would say, transparency in this ecosystem, because you can go on a website talking about an incubator, it's like magic, and the truth and the reality is, yeah, it's often quite different. So maybe you should consider doing this kind of thing. And on your, Andrea, you're launching a new accelerator. So how do you plan to attract these startups? Because, yeah, there is a finite number. So what are your, I would say, ideas, and how do you manage to convince new corporates to go on board with you?
Yeah, so first, to your idea of a Tinder for accelerators, I don't know if that's the best way to go into depth about what the different accelerators do, but I mean, if you set it up, let me know. Well, first also, before getting to your question, I very much agree with what's been said before. I think, again, as an Italian, it's actually good that different international platforms and players see this country as the hub to leverage in this space. So I think that's actually positive for the whole ecosystem. Actually, it's been for a long time the opposite, that when something from abroad comes to Italy and it opens, and it's big news because it's something quite rare. So it's actually good that we're getting to the stage where it's an opposite situation. In terms of how to attract the best startups, because that's, of course, the number one question, you mentioned network effects before in your question. And I guess most people are familiar with it, but it's the idea of how to solve the chicken and egg problem, right? So everyone uses Google Maps because everyone is already using it, so Google Maps gets the best data and it can improve even faster. And that's the key rule of the platform economy. It's very important. And so Plug and Play as a platform follows the same rules of the game. And actually, well, right now we're already in the position when the network effects kicked in, because we have around 300 corporate partners around the world. We've looked at thousands of startups over the years. We're in over 30 locations, so we already have a big network. We have our brand, and so that's the first advantage to find startups. I guess maybe later it will be also nice to look at whether it's better to have more verticals or just focus. I think that's one of the later questions. But actually, why did the Plug and Play become so big other than the network effects? Because, of course, Google has a network effects, but it also has a great product. That's why it grew so much. So in the case of Plug and Play, we started in 2006, mostly on the investment side, so very small ticket sizes in lots of startups. But what happened about 5-6 years ago, when we launched this corporate innovation platform, is that we made sure that everything would be free for startups. So to join our acceleration batches, we don't take any equity, we don't take any fees from startups. And that's very important. It's actually why our partners selected us, because if you want to work with the best startups, those that have already some products, they raise some money, they want to go to the market, then you cannot charge them. That's the real number one feature of our program. In terms of the corporate, so that's the other side. Of course, for them it's very important that you attract the best startups and also at the right time. But of course, the international dimension is quite important. So for example, if we look at retail, we have Esselunga, which is an amazing company, very innovative, but super traditional, as you know, that it's been mostly based around in Italy. So for us, it's a great advantage to say we work in retail in Paris with Carrefour, in Munich with Lidl, and other retailers around the world that have already invested quite a bit in innovation. And so they see this shared expertise globally as something very important that we can add to them here in Italy.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problem also outside of seed series A, etc., is food tech is becoming too broad as a word because maybe 10 years ago food tech was really a really small ecosystem, but right now is made of a lot of startups doing robots in agriculture, about people doing robots for food service, about plant-based, cell meat, etc., etc. And so, do you think that food is too large and a structure has to focus on a more narrow ecosystem? And I think that's what you've done with the Hatchery, and you focus on something a bit smaller than the global food ecosystem. And so why have you done that? Is it because you share my idea that food tech is too big and that someone to be a specialist has to be focused on something narrower than food tech?
Yeah, so I struggle to summarize Hatchery as a food tech incubator or accelerator. I call us a validation platform. And so when we were kicking this off, we started by actually doing pop-ups. We used to go into different parts of Beijing and take over kitchens that had spare capacity to validate food ideas, and we just realized Beijing was ready for new ideas and they wanted to pay full market prices to buy these ideas. So that was the key insight for us. It was, looking at the agency or some of the marketing companies around China trying to charge hundreds of thousands of dollars at corporate agency rates, sitting on these programs with 10 people and a massive overhead. 2 years later, you get a very nice report back. We were almost the opposite. We were like the skunk works guys, just trying to find some kitchen space, and realized there's something really powerful in having a community of people in Beijing that are generally millennials, really big into WeChat marketing, and just want to see what pops and what doesn't. So we're essentially just a community provider of good food, and they're mainly focused on restaurant concepts. We got that was almost our first validation, up to 4,000 people that really kind of foodies that cared about what we were doing, and that's where we realized we had the momentum to start doing other stuff. But in our journey, we're now 3.5 years in. I'm learning so much from the panelists here, and I think we've just, over the last 1.5 years, had some really hard learnings. I think, ourselves as an incubator, we've tried to go too wide. We took on investment from a Chinese co-living business, and ended up putting our physical incubators into these co-living locations. But these co-living locations haven't worked out so well, so now we're kind of the flow of the community into these co-living spaces for us to actually get our data of what's working, what's not. Hasn't worked out so well, so we're now pivoting out of those physical locations and trying to work out again, okay, we've got this community, it doesn't need to be physical or in a restaurant the whole time. They're now wanting to try CPG or plant-based, but how do we do that? And I don't think our core capability is about that quick, real-time, kind of a little bit bootstrapped validation. And so I think we need to be working a lot more with either partners here or corporates or others that know how to do some of the other horizontals a lot better than us.
And from your side, Barry, how do you manage the diversity of food tech, and do you succeed in being able to work with startups from agtech to food science to food service to retail, etc.? How do you manage this diversity from your point of view?
Poorly. The the difference between somebody that's an ag tech versus a food base versus an IT support system, they have different needs and different rates at which they are going to develop their products. One of the things that we, excuse me, struggle to get some of our investors to realize is that to develop a food is not going to take 3 weeks of somebody sitting in a room developing some code and then putting it out there, which they can then change as it goes along. But being able to do that in real time, as Alex is doing, where you take food to somebody and you have iterations, it's a slower process, and some of our investors are not used to that. But we are seeing in Australia a shift to having groups of organisations that they're in ag tech, or they're in IT, or they're in straight food, or they're in services. So there's becoming a natural split in what's going on and how that's actually, who is actually wanting to play, and they're self-selecting in where they want to go. In Australia, on average, there's around about 1,300 new businesses start up every year in the food and agribusiness space, excluding IT and excluding direct machinery manufacturing. Of those people, most of them don't know what an incubator or an accelerator is. They're trying to do it themselves by going and finding a way of getting into market themselves. And we are now spending a lot of our time helping them understand there is help available, but as has been already said, the offer is different for different people at different stages and what they want to get out of it or what they want to be able to see as partners. So one of our roles we're seeing is helping them learn how to have a conversation to work out who they want as a partner. And we're finding, as has already been pointed out, that people want a supply chain support, not just an individual, I want to create something in my kitchen and take it out there. Who's going to be my partners as we go along? But we're seeing self-selection and almost a breaking up of what people are offering into different segments of the supply chain.
Yeah. You, Andrew, focus on plant-based, cell-based, new meat. Why have you focused on this area? Why, among all the other possibilities in food tech, why it excites you in this new future of meat?
Sure. Multiple dimensions again. In my previous iteration, it was food tech broad. We were seeing about 1,000 deals a year. We were choosing the top 20 over a 3-4 year period. You know, that's 4,000 deals that we're having to assess. Multiple business models, multiple exit strategies for different companies in different, sub-verticals of food tech. So, you've got supply chain, sustainability, CPG, hardware, software, delivery. I mean, there's multiple different, business models. What that means is that when you get a partner on board or an investor on board that becomes part of the ecosystem, they're only relevant to 1 or 2 of the companies in the portfolio. So all the effort we create to bring new partners, new mentors, new investors into our ecosystem only benefits a small percentage of the companies in our portfolio, right? The multiplier effect is quite low. So what I wanted to do was to focus on a particular category and bring the right partners, the right distributors, the right investors, the right mentors, so that every time we bring someone to the ecosystem that we're focused on, it has a benefit to every portfolio company that we've made an investment in, so that they're getting it's a forced multiplier, right, to those companies. Also, plant-based, from my point of view, of all the 4,000 deals I looked at, is the most exciting category for a number of key reasons. One, obviously, climate change. The consumers are moving in this direction in a crazy way, which is fantastic. You've got 800 million millennials in China alone that are starting to be cognizant of what they're eating. It's the impact that's having on their health, the impact it's having on the world. The companies that they're buying them from and their view, those companies' views on sourcing, sustainability, local communities, etc. So for me, plant-based kind of checked off a number of boxes. Incredibly exciting space. The other thing that not many people necessarily get about this whole plant-based space is 10 years ago it didn't exist as a category. It was basically tofu and soy in horrible packaging in a really obscure part of the chilled section of the grocery store, and very odd people purchase the products, right? Now, plant-based is dairy, milk, cheese, yogurt, meat, multiple meat formats. It's seafood. It's snacks. It's huge. And if you take any of those individual categories in the traditional food space, there's multiple brands, multiple businesses. In the plant-based category, those spaces, when it comes to brands, are empty. So what you're going to find over the next 10 years are a whole new range of companies doing things in a different way, a whole new range of brands that are going to become the new General Mills or the new Coca-Colas or the new brand X of 50 years ago. And our kids are going to be, buying those brands, and they're going to be their regular brands on a daily basis, and they happen to be plant-based. So my key focus, just to kind of stop for a second, is creating delicious, amazing foods that my brother, who wouldn't be seen dead eating this stuff out of choice, buys because it just tastes damn good. And it happens to have no meat byproducts or meat products in it. That's the solution. We're not selling, we're not creating companies and products that appeal to the vegans and the vegetarians, although they will. We want to create products that appeal to the regular people because they taste damn good and they happen to be healthier, better for them, better for the climate, et cetera, et cetera. It's kind of a nirvana, and we're all about building the nirvana.
Yeah. I think we can see that you are really excited by this new plant-based, cell-based new ventures. And I think we all have one domain of food tech that we are excited about. Mine, for example, I'm really excited about everything around personalization. How we will be able to personalize food? Will it be with DNA testing, microbiome, etc., etc.? This new scientific approach to nutrition, to food, and how industry will be have to change its way of production, etc., to bring us food personalized to our needs. And I just wanted to ask all of you, what is your, in maybe 1 or 2 words, domain of food tech you are really excited, the things that you want to see in the shelves of supermarkets, in the fields, etc. So maybe starting with Andrea. So what excites you in food tech?
Yeah, also starting from what we were saying before, we're trying to get the best of both worlds. Like Plug and Play is large, and we see a lot of cross-vertical collaboration. But at the same time, our programs are focused on the partners and the region. So in the US, for example, we have DuPont and Tyson, so that's very focused on alternative ingredients, proteins, microbiomes. In Italy, where we have different types of companies, it's a different program. And what really excites me about in this space is actually seeing the characteristics of the digital revolution of the internet world coming into this very traditional sector. Because as in every industrial era where you have a new way of doing business, of creating new things, it takes a while to expand throughout the economy. It starts from a few sectors and then slowly gets to every and each one sectors. And food is one of the most traditional ones. And actually going back to what you were saying, I think we're seeing this across every sector. The secret to grow a lot is to get data on consumers and building on that using AI to personalize products. But that's incredibly hard to do in food. So I agree with you. That's a very exciting area for me as well.
Yeah.
If I'm just going to put my China hat on, I suppose what I've learned from China is to always focus on being demand-led. Look at the pull, not the push. So I think with this African pork, the swine flu issue, we're now looking at 2 to 3 years where China is going to get very, very, very serious about plant-based pork. So if I had $10 or $20 million across a bunch of ideas on that pull demand and aligned to the Chinese government needs, I would be looking at pork alt.
So also in our case, we are driven by corporate needs, but personally what I see as interesting is the combination of alternative ingredients and circular economy. So new ingredients from upcycled ingredients or waste.
Because of the growing lifestyle diseases, what we would like to see is more products that are for personal wellness. But ideally, what I would like to see is an ability for the consumer pool that is available to be translated directly down to the growing and manufacturing capability in our supply chain so that they can be prepared to grow the right foods with the right nutrition content for a community and have a seamless demand supply based on consumer expectations and the consumer health, what they are buying to improve their capability, but have that capability of translating right down to a production scale at farm.
Plant-based.
Yeah. And for you, Peter.
Guess what? No, it's interesting. I think that because there are so many incubators, accelerators, and whatever we want to call them, and so on, what you're seeing in the accelerator incubator space, a lot of differentiation.
Yeah.
It's obvious. I mean, that's one of the key things. It's, someone is putting higher tickets, someone is working more with corporates, and one element of differentiation is we're doing that, okay, and we're not doing something else. When we started as an accelerator, we had my personal view, quite different. It was, the interesting is really connecting the different pieces. I mean, so we took all kinds of stuff, from biotech to agrotech to robots and probably that's because I like it also like that. But I strongly believe that there is also the need for cross-breeding of innovation. Certainly, when you go more towards the later stage, people start removing barriers because you have to perform on your investments, right? And whereas at an earlier stage now, you need to differentiate. In terms of what's the next big thing, I like to see what was the big thing. So you go back 4 or 5 years ago, it was delivery. Everyone was delivery. Okay, billions of dollars invested in delivery platforms all across the globe, and then it went into this huge bust. Oh my God, such a horrible business. No one wants to do delivery. Come on, you're joking. And now we're in plant-based. Okay, this is, I would say, especially now with the African swine flu in China, it's really, guys, plant-based. So everyone is going to plant-based. Of course, the tough ones will survive because that's how it works. It's like in the 2000s. Oh my God, internet. That 2001, everyone is against internet. But in the same years, you had Google growing, right? Inexorably. And I think it's very similar cycles. But the interesting thing about delivery 4 or 5 years ago is that now you've got all these big players with very deep pockets that all of a sudden are looking at their business and saying, hey, wait a sec, where's the technology in people riding bicycles and delivering food? And so these guys now are driving innovation in the industry. And I think this is really, really important that we have to understand the technology in the end is driven, the technology development is driven by large, new companies. And until you don't see that, it's very hard to see an innovation cycle really developing. So now it's starting with delivery, where we're seeing a lot of interesting stuff happening in the technology side. In a couple of years, you're going to see it in the plant-based after you get some disappointment on some investments. And I am very interested to see what's going to happen in the next few years with everything that has to deal with logistics and tracking, because also there's been a lot of hype, but there are some really real serious problems. There are some amazing efficiencies that can be brought to the value chain. So I'm looking forward to that, okay, as the next hype to come, and then boost, and then bust, and then whatever.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing about food tech and tech in general, that 1 year you have here every startup is doing blockchain, and this year you ask, do you do blockchain? No, no blockchain. So it was a pleasure to have a talk with you, and thank you again for your quick answers, and I hope we'll see each other again next year here in Seeds&Chips.
Thank you.
Thank you.